Hi everybody, this video is for Tuesday, February 13th, and today we're going to practice solving right triangles when you're given one side and one acute angle. I hope everybody had success with the homework yesterday, and if you didn't, please ask Mr. T or Miss Lisa for help. And if you have very specific questions that they can't answer, email me and I will either email you back, or if it looks like a general question that the whole class has a hard time with, I'll make a little video about it. So again, good luck with your studying and let's get started. Okay. So again, we're working towards solving the whole enchilada, the whole triangle, all the angles and all the sides. Yesterday, we did that when we were given two sides only. And today, we're going to be given a side and an acute angle. We already know the 90-degree angle. It's always shown. And then we're going to have one more angle. And then you'll practice with homework number 20. So our learning goal for today is given a right triangle, find the measures of all of its sides and all of its angles. You can do this if you know either two side lengths, which we did yesterday, or one side length and the measure of one acute angle. So this is what the problems will look like. You're given one side and basically you're given theta, because we're always going to call it theta, and you already know that this guy here is a 90-degree angle. So hopefully you can see right off the bat how we're going to find that third angle. If you can't, think about it for a bit. I'm sure you can figure that out. Okay. So what would be easiest to do first? As I mentioned, I know two angles. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. So the easiest, I know two angles, and I only need to find the measure of one more. So how do I do it? And as you all know for sure by now, all three angles must add up to 180 degrees. So I've got a 90-degree angle, and I've got a 38-degree angle. I add them together. 128, 180, minus 128. 10 take it away, 8 is 2, 7, 8, 2 is 5. And so my third angle is going to be 52 degrees. And we definitely need to analyze and label our sides. So our theta, okay, is 38 degrees. Okay, our other angle is 52. We know our opposite, okay, our side opposite theta is 12.5, so we know opposite. Okay, we do not know our hypotenuse, which is across from the 90-degree angle, and then we do not know our adjacent. Okay, so we only know one of our sides. We need to find the other two. We've already got all three angles figured out. Okay. So of course, to figure out those three sides, the first step is trigonometry. And I know if I look at this, okay, here's my theta, my 38. I know this angle. This is my hypotenuse, which I've already figured out. I know if I find this side, I can easily use the Pythagorean theorem to figure out the hypotenuse. So that's going to be our goal, is to find this other leg. So what do we do? So let's label quickly. No, that's our opposite. Oops, sorry. Our opposite, and this is our adjacent. So our first shot is to find our adjacent. So we're going to have to use trigonometry. because we have no other choice at this point. So we have our theta is 38, and we know by SOHCAHTOA that the function that works with the opposite and the adjacent, okay, is TOA. Okay, again, tangent is the opposite over the adjacent. So we know the tan of theta is the opposite over the adjacent. So we can fill in what we know, and the tangent of 38 degrees is equal to the opposite, which is 12.5 over the adjacent, which we don't know. So now it just becomes a matter of algebra. But let's first find our tangent of 38 degrees. So I use my table. I wonder how I save this. No. I get tired of having to rewrite it every time, so. No. Oh, I guess I have to rewrite it every time. So anyway, so we have tan of 38 equals 12.5 over the adjacent. So let's go to our table. Okay, we're going to come down. And we look for our tan. Here's our tangent. We go down and we find 38. There it is, way down on the bottom. We go over to our tangent, and it's equal to tangent of 38 degrees equals 0.7813. Okay, so let's go back to our blank screen. Okay, so we had the equation. What was it? We had tan theta equals opposite over adjacent. So we had tan of 38 is equal to 12.5 over the adjacent. We know tan of 38 is 0.7813. And a little bit of algebra. We're going to multiply both sides by the adjacent to get that adjacent out of the denominator. So 0.7813 times the adjacent is equal to 12.5. Okay, now we have to isolate our adjacent, so we're going to divide both sides by 0.7813. And our adjacent, turns out, is equal to 15.998, which I'm going to round to 16. Okay, so we've got 16 here. So now all we need to do is find our hypothesis. So we use the Pythagorean theorem, and 12.5 squared plus 16 squared is going to be equal to our hypothesis squared. Okay, so where am I? Okay, this is 156.25 plus 256 equals the hypotenuse squared. So we have 412. If I add those two numbers together, equals the hypotenuse squared. I take the square root of both sides, and the hypotenuse is equal to the square root. Actually, it's 412.25. The square root of 412.25. Now, I'm just fine with you leaving it just like that. I'm not going to have you try to simplify a radical that has a decimal in it. It's messy, and I don't want you to have to do that. Okay, so let's make sure. Let's do our table. And our opposite, okay, is 12.5. Our adjacent is 16. Our hypotenuse, did I do that right? Hypotenuse is the square root of some big huge number, 0.25. Okay, our theta was 38. And our other angle was 52. Here's both degrees. And so there we have it, the whole enchilada starting out with just an angle and just a side. Okay? So let's try this guy. Okay, so let's look at what we know. Let's analyze. So we have a hypotenuse here, because that's our hypotenuse. It's across from the right angle. And we have our theta, which is 59 degrees. And that's it. So if this is theta, then that's the hypotenuse. This would be the adjacent, and this would be the opposite. Okay, so we know what we have and what we don't have, and we also have labeled all of our sides, and we know all of our, and we know which angle that we need to find. Okay, so first thing, find the other angle. Remember, that's the easiest first thing to do. So I'll put 1 up here, and because we already know 2 of the angles, it's easy to find the third. So I'm going to add 90 plus 59. It's 149, and I'm going to subtract that from 180. And hopefully we all remember now why we do it that way. So 10 minus 9 is 1, 7 minus 4 is 3. Okay, so we know our other angle is equal to 31 degrees. Okay. So now we've got our 3 angles. We need to find another side. So we're going to find our first side using trig. Using trig. So we have a hypotenuse, and we can either use the adjacent or we can use the opposite. Either way, it doesn't really matter. So why not, for the fun of it, let's use the sine. So we have the sine of theta, which is 59 degrees, is equal to the opposite, which we don't know, over the hypotenuse, which is 16. Okay, the sine of 59, I'm just going to tell you that since you all know how to use the table now, is 0.8572. So that's going to be equal to the opposite over 16. So this guy's pretty easy. We're going to multiply both sides by 16. And 16 times 0.8572 is 13.71. And we wipe out the 16ths, and our opposite is equal to 13.71. And now we have all 3 angles, and we have our 2 sides. So good old Pythagoras is going to help us again to find that third side. And we're going to have our opposite, which is 13.71 squared, plus our adjacent squared is going to equal to our hypotenuse squared. So, oh, jeez. Sorry about the dog. I bet if you were sleeping, that woke you up. Sure woke me up. Okay, let's finish this guy. So 13.71 squared is actually equal to 187.96 plus our adjacent squared is equal to 16 squared, which is 256. Okay, so our adjacent squared, we're going to subtract 187.96 from both sides, and our adjacent squared is equal to 68.04. So our adjacent is equal to the square root of 68.04. Great. So now we can do our table. Here's our opposite, our adjacent, our hypotenuse, our theta, and our other angle. So our opposite was 13.71, and our adjacent was the square root of 68.04. Our hypotenuse was 16. Our theta is 59 degrees, and our other angle is 31 degrees. And again, you don't need to worry about simplifying that radical of 68.04. Just leave it just as it is. If you need to simplify, I will tell you to simplify, but I definitely won't have you simplifying a decimal. It's too messy at this point. Algebra 2, maybe, but not geometry. Okay, so there it is, the whole enchilada. And okay, so here to review, this is from yesterday. If I know the lengths of two sides, I do my analyze, label, make table. Find the third side with the Pythagorean theorem. Use trig to find theta. And then you find all other angles, find the other angle with that knowledge that all angles have to add up to 180. So if you know one side and one angle, it's also just 4 steps. First one's the same, analyze, label, make table. 2, the second step, you're going to find the other angle because all angles add up to 180. You're going to find one of the other sides using trig, and you're going to find the third side using the Pythagorean theorem. So all these things you know how to do. We've practiced them a lot. So you obviously, it's easy to find another angle because they all add up to 180, so that gives you that third angle. You know how to find a side using trig. We learned that last week, and by Friday you guys were pretty good at it, and actually very good at it, and you finished the homework really fast. And then the third side using the Pythagorean theorem, which we did 2 weeks ago. So I think you should be in good shape. But again, you have Mr. T and Miss Lisa to help you. And if you get stuck, you can email me, and I can help get you unstuck. So the homework tonight, homework 20, is another pick 6. So you can pick 6 out of the handout, but if you happen to do all of the problems, you will get some extra credit, which I think everybody might want to be working on now as we get closer to the test. So we will begin our review tomorrow. So see you then.